Hello my loves, welcome back to my channel. I am so sorry this video is late. You may very well be seeing this coming weekend, which means I skipped a week. If you can't hear it in my voice, I am recovering, unfortunately, from the flu, which is why you didn't get a video this weekend, but I'm here to do the end of the year book tag. The original creator of the tag is linked in the video description below, and without further ado, let's just get started. So aside from the fact that I sound very squeaky, there are 6 questions in this tag just telling you more about my reading plans for these final few weeks of 2023. I know everyone says this, but it really is so hard to believe that we're already at the end of the year. I feel like September and October just like poof into the air because they went so quickly. But the first question is books I started that I need to finish. You all know I'm a mood reader, which means I read what I want to read, and when I get bored I stop reading. And that means that there are a few books that I am in the middle of that I never formally, fully, like wholeheartedly DNF'd. That was a lot of words to describe that. But the first is Love and Other Words by Christina Lauren. This is a second chance friends to lovers, and they were lovers as teenagers, and then something happens, they stop speaking, there's a lot of grief, and she runs into him again, but this time she's engaged. I'm like 50% through this book and I never finished it just because I got into a horror reading mood, which is the joys of being a mood reader, so I never went back to this. The other one is Daughter of No World, which I am like 60% of the way through, and honestly this book is fine. It isn't anything that I'm like, oh, I don't like this, so I'm gonna DNF it. It's just I put it down and I don't care to pick it back up. Like I genuinely have no interest in what happens, and from what I hear, the romance between Tasana and her mentor, which I haven't even told you this is about, I will tell you in a minute, people seem to love, and for me, I'm like, I don't care if they get together or not. I need more things to be happening, and it's a lot of build up to what I imagine is going to be all of the action in the book happening in the final third of the book, which is fine. It can have the cozy elements. For me, I have to be invested to care about the cozy elements, or for me to care about the training and to care about that character arc, and it's fine, and I want to finish it, but I just keep putting it down and I don't pick it back up. But the story is the story of Tasana, who lives in this world with 2 different like forms of magic, and she is sold as a slave after her town is raided, I believe, and she eventually is able to purchase her freedom. Things obviously go wrong and she ends up at the, I want to call them the Citadel. They're not the Citadel, but like picture that. She ends up there asking for help, and for some reason they agree to train her, and she's trying to like find justice for her friend and speak about like how horrible her life was as a slave and like why this should not continue. That's a really shitty summary, but that's essentially what's been happening for the past like 200 pages. And Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute, I want to finish. This by Talia Hibbert. It's her YA debut. It's the story of like academic rivals, these 2 friends who had a falling out, and years later end up at the same retreat, like this wilderness retreat, where whoever it wins at the end also wins a scholarship, and they both are going for the money. They try to go for their own dreams. They both want to be lawyers. I knew going off the bat, because I love Talia Hibbert, I don't love YA romance all the time. It's a really hard thing for me to enjoy, and mostly I just want to finish this one because I don't want to go into 2024 with this book as something that I DNF, because I never hard DNF'd it. I'm just like, it's fine. Again, I don't care really. Do I have an autumnal book to transition into the end of the year with? Yes, I do. I have Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia for Fairies. If I had the energy, I would show you the books, but I don't. They're in the other room. Anyway, Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia for Fairies, which is the story of this woman who is a researcher on all things like fae and magical creatures, and she ends up working with someone. It's like a romance. It's cozy. It's cute. I've heard it's given me all of the November vibes, so like a cozy fantasy. And then we have One Dark Winter, which leans a little bit more on the horror side. One Dark Winter. One Dark Window, which leans more on the horror side, and is the story of this woman. She at some point point had this fever, which usually people would be like killed for, because when you get this fever, your blood turns black and you get magic. And she had the fever as a child, but she never had any magical consequences until she's older, and she realized that she has something called, which she calls the darkness, or something in her mind, which is this being who can speak to her in her mind, and they're on the run. All I know is it's very atmospheric, and people often describe it as like the perfect autumnal book. Is there a new release I am still waiting for? There are a couple of new releases I'm waiting for, but there's one that I'm waiting for that I'm most excited for, and that is Hoarded by the Dragon by Lillian Lark, which is coming out on December 29th. So literally in the final few days of 2023. Hoarded by the Dragon, all I know about this is it's about a woman who is a thief, and one day she breaks into this dragon's hoard to steal from him, to steal his treasure, and he doesn't like that, so she walks away, but not only with his treasure but with his baby. This just makes me laugh. I've enjoyed other Lillian Lark monster romances before, and I think this will be such a fun book to end 2023 in. What are the 3 books I need to read by the end of the year? I've already done a whole video on books I need to read by the end of 2023, which I will pop here and link in the description if you want to check that video out. But I'm going to mention some books that I don't think I mentioned in that video, because I was looking back and 2023 was the year of the Big Book Challenge, and I have not done very well on that. I've DNF'd Babel, and I have a bunch of other books that I just not have gotten to. And to be fair to me, listen, the 3rd book and the Diviners, I said the final book because I'm not counting book 4. The 3rd book and the Diviners I know is going to be very emotionally intense and have a lot of religious themes and themes of racism and just like all of the horrific things that our main character trying to have to go through that I'm not mentally prepared to read. And then the sinister mystery of the mesmerizing girl, I was expecting to be like this like almost fantasy action adventure set in Egypt, and instead we're talking a lot about eugenics and racism in England. And again, I'm not mentally in the space where I can read that right now. So the other books that are on the list I think I can get to, and I want to get to at least accomplish something off of this list. Hench, I want to say by Mariana Zapata, but that definitely 100% is not right. But Hench is the story of this woman who is like a secretary and assistant to supervillains, and she just needs the money really, so she does it because it's just paperwork, it's back and stuff. And one day when there's this fight, the superhero attacks her, and she is permanently disabled from that, and she starts doing a lot of research into how harmful superheroes actually are and how often they harm, hurt, and kill civilians with no repercussions, and really don't care who they are hurting in their pathway to be the hero. And she ends up teaming up with this supervillain because he sees the research that she's doing, and he's like, hell yeah, I want to take down the superheroes as well, and you're doing this really important work, let me help you with that. I just heard that it's very good for her and such an enjoyable time, and I really love that perspective, because I think that when it comes to heroes and villains, a lot of that comes down to perspective of what is going on and exactly who's rooting for what, because a villain never sees themselves as the villain and the hero always sees themselves as the hero. So just exploring that dynamic I think will be really interesting. The other book is She Who Became the Sun, which, yes besties, I still have not read this. It's very long, but I'm going to read this. I will accomplish something from this big books list. She Who Became the Sun, you've heard me pitch it so many times. It's often pitched as a Mulan retelling. I think it's loosely a Mulan retelling about this girl who she and her brother go see a psychic, equivalent of a psychic, that's not what she's called, but they go to see her, and she says, your brother is going to have a great destiny and you're going to amount to nothing. But lo and behold, her brother dies very young, and she ends up taking his place and his name in the army, and she has this great destiny for herself. I've heard this is sapphic. I know I'm going to love this book. I have it on Kindle Unlimited. I've been holding it hostage on Kindle Unlimited because if you don't know, on KU, if you have a book checked out, you get to keep that book until you return it, even if it's removed off of KU. So I've been holding this book hostage. I am going to read it before the end of the year. And then finally, The Stardust Thief, which I do own. It's on my shelf. I don't remember why I want to read this book, and I don't even remember what it's about, but I know that I want to read it. Okay, number 5. Is there a book I think could still surprise me me and become a favorite of the year? And the answer is yes, it's Slewfoot by Brahm. You all know that I attempted to read Slewfoot at the start of this year, but could not get any further because mentally I couldn't deal with the horrific amounts of misogyny that was going on in this story. If you don't know, we're following, I'm gonna call her Tabitha, but I don't think that's right. Something. She's in the US, but very early on. It's like the 1600s, and it's the time of the witch trials. And she lives on this farm with her husband, and everybody thinks that her husband is too lenient on her. He mysteriously dies, and she is left with the farm, except that her evil brother-in-law is trying to sell the farm, and they're like, you're a woman, you can't do it, so just give it to your brother. She's like, no, just like give me a chance. And she runs into this demon named Slewfoot, and he helps her like grow all of her crops, and they become friends. And of course, she already has a bit of a reputation because she's a strong, independent woman, and it's the 1600s, and people don't like that. So like, you're a witch, and we're gonna burn you at the stake. And I just know there's this line where she's like, if it's a witch you want, it's a witch you're going to get. And I know I'm gonna love it, but I just couldn't at that time handle like the misogyny and the aggressive patriarchy in this story. I was like, ew. But now I think that I'm in a better mental state to be able to handle that topic, and I know I'm gonna love it because this book is very much like good for her, and I just love women getting what they need to get. And have I already started making reading plans for the new year? Yes, very loosely. I have the same goal for next year that I did for this year, which is to read down my physical TBR. I am a mood reader, and that's often very hard to do, but that is one of my goals for 2024. And my other goal is to read classics, which I'm doing with Riley's Patreon at some point if we decide that we're going to do that. So that's my goal for 2024. Outside of reading goals, I'm also starting to establish some of my personal goals for the new year, one of which is to learn to draw, because that's something that I've always wanted to do. I've taken up more creative hobbies this year, like crocheting. I'm crocheting a blanket right over there, which you can't see behind the camera. I've taken up diamond painting and paint by numbers, and I think that I'm at the point now where I would love to do drawing and sculpting. I've always been really into creative like tasks like that, little hobbies and things like that, and drawing is a skill. And I think so often, this is such a long ramble, but so often we're thinking like you're either born with the talent to draw, you just don't have that ability, and I don't think that's true. I think that drawing is a skill like anything, and I think that anyone could learn to draw, and I'm determined to prove that to myself, that if I want to be an illustrator, and if I have that drive and passion to want to learn to draw, and I've had it for so many years, that I should try, and I should try to learn to draw, and know that my work is going to be really shitty to start with, but I will progress, and I will eventually get to the point where I have some ability to draw something. So thank you so much for watching this video and listening to my, I want to call it Kermit voice. It's not, I just sound very squeaky and nasally, and I apologize for that, but I wanted to get a video out. As always, thank you so much for watching. As I mentioned, I'm going to see you in my next video. Bye bye.